Second. Oh, geez. Oh,
Okay.
that's from down. Oh, wow.
So at this point, once you've put on that first glaze, you'll notice actually the shadows look still very stark. But don't forget that this is actually right now on very harsh white light. So I'm going to switch off the white light, and can you switch off the white light? And you let the ambient light take over. And then as the ambient light takes over, you'll actually see it looks a lot better already at this stage. It's important to realize if you paint under white light, it really shows the shadows, but that's not what you actually see. Okay, back on white light. So if you blend it in white light, in normal light, you will see it looks very well blended. Nothing can survive white light.
Some can, I don't know.
Now this one also can, but the thing is I actually like to paint, so if you look at this,
Yeah.
so you see,
It's a warmer light, yeah.
and there's a low warm light and a blue and a purple. But actually I like to paint under white light because it will force you to blend, and then in normal light it just looks a lot better. Okay, so now we are going to do, so you saw we went from the super dark to super light. Now we're going to go from super light down to mid-tone. So the way we do that is you just reverse the step, but you are much more careful about layering on the color. So the first one is going to be the highlight. So when you're doing the highlight, you are going to use like dry brush consistency, very, very thick and very precise. And you now want to pick up like the top of the highlights. So for example, you can get into the forehead wrinkles, just the top part, you know. Okay, so for example, here you want to get into the forehead wrinkle. That's all you're going to do. That's already too much. Now at this stage you want to do the eyes again. It's just touching. You want to just touch the top and that's it. You don't want to do more than that. Get the top of the ears. Top of the ears. Maybe the top of the voice box and the top of this. That's it. Hey, what's up?
Hey! Oh! Apple Star. Wow.
Okay, then now for the hands, right?
Never seen you in uniform.
Done. So basically at this stage, that's all you want to do, not more than that. Okay, so now we're going to go down to the next highlight, the darker highlight. And as you go down, your highlights are going to get bigger and bigger. So you want to avoid the eyes. You don't need to touch the eyes anymore. The eyes can only take one highlight. You can't do more than that. But you're gonna go bigger on your highlights as they get darker. So your highlights get bigger. Sometimes on the shadows in the neck, you don't want to touch it at this stage because it can become too much. But somehow this figure looks okay, maybe because the hat brim is not covering, so it seems to be correct. Okay, so this is the second to last highlight. Now we're going to do the last highlight.
Can you give a shot? You turn it to me a bit. There we go. Okay, got it.
Now when you get to the last highlight, it's actually quite dilute. It's almost glaze-like. Okay, so basically now you're here on the last highlight. Now the next step is actually the blending step again. Now mind you, we did one blending step. So when your transitions between the shadow and mid-tone are very stark, you might want to blend once. But when you reach to, if you can pass that stage, then you've only got two blending steps. One is right at the end when you hit the first highlight, and then now when you come to mid-tone, you can do one. You will do one. So minimum it will be two blending steps. Okay, again you get your bigger brush and you get a big dollop of your base flesh color, huh? And it needs to be glazing consistency. So test the glaze on a piece of rag. Make sure it's a glaze, because a wash will not blend. Only a glaze blends. Okay. Make sure it's dry. Okay, then we'll go in one last time. So this last step is actually the end of the kind of the basic parts. After this will be quite interesting, the ones that give the figure the character and all that. Or when you talk about the basic figure painting, this is it. Yeah. Yeah, generally I don't bother on a part of the figure that can't be seen. So, I mean, you do the best you can, but I won't go crazy trying to get into the back of the figure and all that. Okay. Sometimes if it's still a little bit overdone, you can go back in. But really, you don't want to do too much at this stage. But yeah, I think that's about it. Okay. Yeah, so that's about it. So now comes the fun part. So next we're gonna do the eyes.
Let's get one with it.
Yeah. So.
This way a bit. No. Yep. Hold on a sec. Wow, it changes completely with that light. Is that the white? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so now we're gonna do the eyes. So eyes, you've seen like many people describe many techniques. This is my technique. It's actually quite straightforward. I use a toothpick. Do you have a toothpick?
Toothpick. No,
Okay, good. So you get your standard, you know, the cocktail stick kind of toothpick.
Yeah.
And what you want to do is you want to just sand it into a really sharp point. Now the idea behind sanding is not actually to create the point, because you'll see later I'm going to blunt it. The idea of sanding is to break up the surface polish so that it actually will wick, it'll take up paint. Otherwise, if it's too like straight out of the factory, it's too impervious to, it won't take up paint basically. So you want to wet the surface. Now you can use whatever color. So you see a lot of people say, okay, don't use this color, don't use it. It's fine, you can use whatever. You want to use green, you want to use blue, whatever. The thing I find is it's not really the color, it is actually the consistency of the eye and the form of the eye. So in this case, since the other guy was already blue, I'm gonna take blue. Just because it's on my palette. I've got green here also, but I've already got a lot of green on the uniform, so I don't want to add another green. Okay, so here we go. Now the key to the eye is you want to point upwards. You want to point upwards, okay? So from this angle, you kind of point upwards and do that. Okay? There. Now, you'll see that actually right now the eye looks like it has spilled over, right? I mean, it's gone around the boundaries and all that. That's one thing. The second thing is, you know, there are a lot of modelers who will say do the eyes first. I actually do the eyes last because it gives me a lot of freedom to paint when I paint. Otherwise, you'll always be very careful about where the paint goes, and then you'll be too scared to paint and all those things. But what I do is that now, okay, so this step basically is to focus on the symmetry of the eye. It's just a symmetry, you don't have to worry about color and all that. Can I get the fine brush now? And unfortunately for this step, you do need a very fine brush. And basically what you're going to do, so this is like the only time you use a triple O when you do the eyes. So this is a triple O, and I'm gonna get this color. It's actually ivory white. But like I say, you can use, sometimes I use highlight color also. It depends, you know, whatever you want to use is fine. Now you look at the eye and you want to pick out, you don't want to do the whole eye, you just want to pick out bits of it and kind of form it up. And what I do is I actually create like that kind of thing. See that? So I create an eye that shows the lower part of the eyelid, the lower part of the eye white. Now, do you have to do eyes? I think it depends on your project. If let's say your project is like a big diorama, then no one really cares, or you have one particular, you know, officer or someone who's commanding everyone and the attention is on that one officer, then yeah, maybe you want to spend all that time. But by and large, if you have a diorama with a lot of figures or something like that, then not much point painting everyone's eyes. Okay, and done. Okay, so that's how you do the basic eye. Now this looks very crude right now because the next step is you're going to take shadow and you're going to reform the lower eyelid. So you're gonna take the deeper shadow in a very dilute fashion. Okay, and you're gonna disaster. Okay, so you're gonna reform the lower eyelid. There. And there. The upper eyelid is not so important to reform. We'll see why in a while. You can sort of do that because sometimes, you know, it gives it that tired look, kind of that bloodshot eye look. So it's okay. Okay, so that's this stage. So now we're going to put the highlights of the eyelid back on. So back to highlight color. So you're gonna reform the eyelids, huh? So this part you can go back and forth until you get an eye that you like. That's kind of the nice thing about acrylic paints. They tend not to get so thick that you have to stop at some point. Whereas if you do oils and all that, yeah, you can't keep going. Yeah, I kind of like that. Okay. So now we've done the eyes. Now we're gonna do the lower lip. So lower lip, we go back to an old brush, and what you do is you use like a red with a highlight color. Somewhere here. I like to keep this part a little bit dark. that's a bit right. So that's the baseline. And you sometimes want to kind of blend it in with a shadow color. Yeah, I think that looks better. Okay. Yep. Yep. So at this point, you can do a bit of like what I call character building. You just sort of move around the figure and pick out small details that you want to touch up. So you notice we don't really blend. We don't really blend acrylic. Nice. Okay. Yeah, call him.